The dream always starts the same way. Summer of 1976, bicentennial year. Flags everywhere, fireworks planned for evening, the whole country drunk on 200 years of independence. But 6-year-old Benjamin Pierce doesn't care about any of that. He cares about the green tractor in the driveway with paint so bright it hurts to look at in the sun. His father's calloused hand covers his small one on the steering wheel. The cab smells like diesel and leather and Old Spice, a combination that will trigger memories for the rest of his life. Samuel Pierce's voice rumbles from somewhere deep in his chest, the kind of voice that makes you believe everything it says. See that color, son? That's the color of reliability. When a man shakes hands with John Deere, it means something. It's not just business. It's family. You'll keep this handshake when I'm gone. Little Benjamin nods, not fully understanding, but knowing this moment matters. His feet don't reach the pedals. His hands barely grip the wheel, but he feels the weight of something bigger than machinery, bigger than metal and hydraulics and horsepower. He feels the weight of a promise. The dream always ends the same way, too. Samuel's face in the rearview mirror, proud and certain, fading like smoke until only the voice remains. You'll keep this handshake when I'm gone. Benjamin Pierce woke in his truck cab at 6:47 in the morning on January 22, 2024, with that voice still echoing in his skull. 54 years old, neck stiff from sleeping upright, coffee cold in the cup holder beside him, and in front of him, lined up like soldiers awaiting execution, 11 John Deere tractors gleamed green in the early Nebraska sun, each one tagged with lot numbers, each one fueled to 3/4, each one inspected by men with clipboards who didn't know these machines the way he did, who couldn't tell you which one pulled a little left in wet soil or which one had a hydraulic leak he'd been meaning to fix for 2 months. Ready for resale to the highest bidder at an auction in Council Bluffs. 48 years of history reduced to inventory. Margaret appeared at his window, 2 thermoses in her hands. She didn't knock, just stood there waiting until he unlocked the door and accepted the fresh coffee. Her face carried the expression of someone who'd already said everything that needed saying at 2 in the morning when he finally signed the papers. "You okay?" she asked. Benjamin took a sip, burned his tongue. Just wondering what Dad would say. Margaret climbed into the passenger seat uninvited, which meant she had something to add. 29 years of marriage had taught him to recognize the signs. She stared through the windshield at the machinery that had defined their adult lives together. "Your father," she said carefully, "would say you kept your word longer than they deserved." The first tractor inched up the loading ramp. An 8 RX 410 purchased 18 months ago for $512,000. The newest machine he owned. The hydraulics whined under the weight. Benjamin's jaw tightened, but his face stayed neutral. The same expression he'd worn through his father's funeral in 2001. Through the year, the drought nearly took everything. Through every moment when showing emotion felt like admitting defeat. What the people loading those tractors didn't know was this. Samuel Pierce had bought their first Deere the year Benjamin turned 6. Benjamin had learned to drive on that machine before he learned to drive a car. Had spent 48 years believing that green paint meant reliability, that a handshake with John Deere meant family, that loyalty flowed both directions. But history doesn't pay bills. History doesn't fix broken promises. His phone buzzed. Text from Thomas in Omaha. "Dad, you still good with this?" Benjamin typed back without hesitation. "Been good for 2 months. This is just paperwork catching up." The response came fast. "Corporate's going to notice." "Let them." In the rearview mirror, the last green tractor disappeared into the trailer. The loading crew began securing chains, methodical and efficient. They'd done this before, probably did it every week. To them, this was Tuesday. To Benjamin Pierce, it was the end of something that had defined 3 generations. 1976, the first handshake. Samuel Pierce stood in the Grand Island Farm Equipment showroom with his checkbook out and his jaw set. 2,100 acres of mostly wheat. The bank had approved financing that made his wife nervous and his accountant skeptical, but Samuel knew what he knew. "A man needs reliable equipment," he told the salesman whose name was lost to time, but whose pitch was immortalized in family legend. "And I hear John Deere builds reliable." "More than reliable, Mr. Pierce. You're buying into a partnership. We take care of our customers for life." The handshake that sealed the deal felt firm, permanent, like shaking hands with the future itself. 6-year-old Benjamin watched from a folding chair in the corner, swinging his legs and eating a lollipop the receptionist had given him. He didn't understand the numbers his father discussed or the terms being negotiated, but he understood the pride in Samuel's voice when he said, "We're a Deere family now." That phrase became gospel. Spoken at dinner tables and in machine sheds, repeated to neighbors who asked about the new equipment, whispered like a prayer during the lean years when the tractors kept running even though the crops barely covered costs. "We're a Deere family now." Benjamin believed it the way children believe everything their fathers say with conviction. 1988, the inheritance. 22 years later, Benjamin stood in the same showroom, signing the same kind of papers, making the same kind of promises. But this time, Samuel wasn't there to guide his hand. The cancer had taken him suddenly, 1 month from diagnosis to funeral. Lung cancer, the doctors said, though Samuel had never smoked a day in his life. Sometimes the body just turns against itself for reasons nobody can explain. Benjamin inherited 2,100 acres and $340,000 in debt. The bank suggested selling. His mother suggested selling. Margaret Hayes, who he was dating but hadn't proposed to, yet gently suggested selling. Benjamin kept every piece of equipment, every acre, every dollar of debt. "My father built this," he told anyone who asked. "I'm not the generation that loses it." He paid down the debt over 7 years through wheat prices that barely covered costs and corn yields that fluctuated like a drunk man's walk. Worked 18-hour days during planting season and 20-hour days during harvest. Learned to fix things himself because service calls cost money he didn't have. The green tractors kept running. The Deere family partnership held, or so he believed. 1995. The wedding and the expansion. Benjamin married Margaret Hayes on a Saturday in October when the harvest was done and the fields lay empty waiting for winter. She wore white. He wore the only suit he owned. Derek Holloway stood up as best man, grinning like they'd just won the Super Bowl. Derek worked at the Kearney dealership then, parts department mostly, but learning sales from his uncle who managed the place. 25 years old, same as Benjamin, with that easy confidence that good salesmen never lose. "You're marrying an accountant," Derek said during the reception 3 beers in and philosophical. "Smart move. She'll keep you from making the same mistakes your dad did." Benjamin didn't take offense. Derek was right. Margaret brought order to chaos, spreadsheets to gut instincts, long-term planning to season-by-season survival. Together they bought 900 adjacent acres from a retiring neighbor who didn't have kids to pass it to, upgraded to 7,000 series tractors financed over 10 years at rates that made Margaret wince, but that Benjamin insisted were necessary. Derek, newly promoted to dealer manager, shook Benjamin's hand in the showroom that day. Both of them young enough to think time was infinite and relationships were permanent. "Your dad would be proud, Benjamin. You're building something real here." The handshake felt like the one Samuel had made 19 years earlier. Firm, permanent, a partnership that would last. Benjamin believed it the way grown men believe things that sound true when spoken with confidence. 2008, the expansion that almost broke them. The year the economy collapsed and took half the country with it. Somehow missed rural Nebraska, or at least glanced off without causing fatal damage. Benjamin saw opportunity in the chaos. Farmers his age were getting out, retiring early, selling to corporate operations that measured land in square miles instead of acres. He expanded to 4,200 acres through a combination of luck, timing, and Margaret's ruthless financial planning. They bought 6 new 8R series tractors over 3 years. Total investment, $1,847,000. The kind of number that made his mother gasp when she heard it. The kind that made Margaret run projections until 2 in the morning, checking and rechecking to make sure they weren't betting the farm on machinery that might depreciate faster than they could pay it off. Derek walked the lot with Benjamin like they were inspecting art in a gallery, older now, carrying some weight around the middle, but still wearing that confidence like cologne. "Benjamin, you're my best customer. Your family built this dealership's reputation." The words felt true. The numbers supported them. Benjamin spent between $42,000 and $68,000 annually on parts alone. Service ran $18,000 to $34,000 depending on the year. New equipment every 2 to 3 years, anywhere from $200,000 to $600,000 per purchase. Margaret kept meticulous records, every invoice filed, every transaction logged, every penny accounted for in spreadsheets that could tell you what they'd spent on hydraulic hoses in March of 2003. By her calculation done late one night in November of 2023, when she couldn't sleep, they'd spent $3,340,000 with John Deere between 1976 and 2024. 48 years of loyalty converted to a number that looked obscene when written out. But she noticed something else, something that gnawed at her accountant's brain until she built a separate spreadsheet just to track it. Prices weren't just going up with inflation, they were accelerating beyond reasonable market rates. The same hydraulic hose that cost $58 in 2020 now showed an invoice price of $147 in 2023. Service hourly rates jumped from 89 to 156. Software update fees appeared where none had existed before. Line items for diagnostic integration and system calibration that sounded important but felt like invention. She showed Benjamin the spreadsheet one morning over coffee. "We've overpaid by $127,000 over 10 years. Benjamin stared at the numbers, each line item a small wound that collectively bled them dry. "That can't be right." "It's right. I ran it 3 times. They're price gouging us, Benjamin, and they know we have no choice." He wanted to argue, wanted to find the flaw in her math, wanted to believe that 48 years meant something beyond quarterly revenue targets. But the spreadsheet didn't lie. Numbers never did. "We always have a choice," he said quietly. "We just haven't made it yet." Fall of 2022 brought changes that felt small at first, but accumulated like compound interest. Benjamin needed a transmission seal for the 8R370. Called the parts desk on a Tuesday morning, expecting the usual routine. Ryan Foster, 29 years old and new to the counter, took the call with cheerful efficiency. The answer came back different than expected. "We can order that. 3 weeks. Benjamin frowned at his phone like it had insulted him. 3 weeks you used to stock these." Keyboard clicking in the background. Corporate changed inventory allocation. Got to order everything now. 3 weeks became 4. Benjamin lost 8 days of harvest waiting for a seal that would have taken 20 minutes to install. 8 days of perfect weather while a $400,000 machine sat idle because a $40 part existed somewhere in a warehouse, but not on a shelf where it mattered. Spring of 2023 brought worse. The 8R threw an engine code during planting. Simple diagnostic, the kind Benjamin had done himself for years, using dealer software that let him read fault codes and clear minor issues without burning a service call. He called the dealership for login credentials, expecting the usual routine. Lucas Brennan, parts manager for 15 years, and someone Benjamin had known since Lucas was a kid, working summers at the co-op, delivered different news. "Can't give those out anymore, Benjamin. Corporate policy. Gotta bring it in." Benjamin stood in his shop phone pressed to his ear, staring at a tractor he owned outright, that he'd paid $460,000 for, that he couldn't diagnose because someone in an office in Iowa had decided he didn't have permission. "For a diagnostic code I can read myself." Lucas's voice carried the tone of a man delivering news he didn't agree with but couldn't change. "New rules, sorry." The pattern continued through summer. Service delays that accumulated like interest on debt. June planter hydraulics failed mid-season. Derek said 7 days for a service appointment. 7 days when planting windows measured in hours mattered more than money. July combine needed a bearing replacement. 10 days wait. August routine maintenance that used to be same day now required scheduling 2 weeks out. Each time Benjamin asked the same question, voice level but jaw tight. "You got loaners?" Each time the answer came back identical. "All out." The phrase became a mantra, a corporate shield against accountability. "We'd help you, but we can't because resources are limited and you're not priority enough to matter more than the next guy. Never mind that you've been a customer for 48 years. Never mind that you've spent over $3 million. The system says you wait, so you wait." Then came Matthew Cooper's call in May of 2023. Matthew was 68 years old, had been an independent mechanic since 1981. The kind of man who could rebuild a transmission blindfolded and diagnose engine problems by sound alone. His shop sat on the edge of Kearney, a metal building with bay doors and a waiting room that smelled like coffee and old magazines. Farmers trusted him because he was good and because he was honest. Two qualities that didn't always overlap in the repair business. The distress in his voice was immediate. "Benjamin, they locked me out completely. I can't service any Deere built after 2021. Software won't let me in." Benjamin set down the wrench he'd been holding. "What about your dealer access?" A bitter laugh. "Revoked. Said I'm not an authorized service partner anymore. I've been fixing Deere since 1981, Benjamin. 42 years. Now I can't touch them." Matthew lost 60% of his business in 6 months, had to lay off 2 employees, both of whom had families and mortgages, and lives built on the assumption that competence meant job security. The waiting room sat empty most days. Bills piled up. Corporate policy had destroyed his livelihood with a keystroke, with a password change, with a decision made by people who'd never met him and never would. Fall of 2023 painted Margaret's spreadsheet in red numbers that accumulated like storm clouds. Air filter 2022 price $34. 2023 price $89. Hydraulic hose 2021 price $58. 2023 price $147. Oil change parts kit 2020 price $127. 2023 price $286. She showed Benjamin in October, both of them at the kitchen table again, the place where important conversations happened after the day's work was done and before sleep claimed them. "They're price gouging us. They know we have no choice." Benjamin studied the numbers, each line item a small wound that collectively bled them dry. "We always have a choice. We just haven't made it yet." That night, he opened his laptop for the first time with intention instead of idle curiosity. Typed into Google Massey Ferguson Dealers, Nebraska. Hit enter. Watched results populate like possibilities he'd never allowed himself to consider. Riverside Equipment, Ogallala, 87 miles west. The website showed testimonials from farmers who sounded like him. The owner's bio mentioned he was a former Deere customer himself, someone who understood what walking away meant. Benjamin didn't call that night, but he bookmarked the page. January 14th, 2024, 6:42 in the morning. Temperature 11 degrees Fahrenheit. The kind of cold that makes metal brittle and diesel gel and optimism evaporate. Benjamin's newest tractor, the 2022 John Deere 8RX 410 that cost $512,000, purchased 18 months ago and still under full manufacturer warranty through a fuel injector fault code during morning startup. The code itself wasn't catastrophic. Fuel injectors failed. They were replaceable. Any decent mechanic could swap one in under 2 hours, but the timing was surgical in its cruelty. Manure hauling season. Critical window before spring thaw, when you could move heavy equipment across fields without turning everything to mud. Days mattered. Hours mattered. A broken tractor meant falling behind, and falling behind meant scrambling to catch up for the rest of the season. Benjamin called the Kearney dealership at 6:58. Ryan Foster answered on the third ring voice, still carrying morning grogginess. Kearney Deere Parts and Service. Ryan, it's Benjamin Pierce. Got a fuel injector code on the 8RX, still under warranty. Keyboard clicking. The universal sound of someone checking a system that would deliver news Benjamin already knew wouldn't be good. Okay, Mr. Pierce, let me check the schedule. Pause. More clicking. Earliest we can get you in is February 4th. 3 weeks. Benjamin's hand tightened on the phone. Ryan, this is a $500,000 machine under warranty. Sitting broken. I understand, sir, but we're backed up. New scheduling system from corporate. Can I drop it off after hours? You can work on it when you have time. Can't do that anymore. Liability policy changed. No after-hours drop-offs. Of course. The policies. Always the policies. Invisible rules created by people in offices who'd never touched a wrench or missed a planting window. What about a loaner? All loaners are out. The phrase had become a mantra, a corporate shield against accountability. Then let me buy the injector. I'll have Matthew Cooper install it. The pause that followed lasted long enough for Benjamin to hear his own heartbeat. When Ryan spoke again, his voice carried something different, something rehearsed. That would void your warranty, Mr. Pierce. Corporate's strict on that now. Benjamin sat in his truck cab phone pressed to his ear and realized something fundamental had broken. Not the fuel injector. The relationship. Derek wasn't his partner anymore. Derek was corporate's employee, reading from a script written by people who valued policy over people. 48 years of history compressed into a service ticket with a 3-week wait time. So I wait 3 weeks. I'm sorry, Mr. Pierce, it's the system. Benjamin nodded even though Ryan couldn't see him. Yeah, I'm starting to see that. He ended the call without saying goodbye, sat in the truck for 10 minutes, engine off cold, seeping through the doors. Margaret found him there when she came out with coffee, saw his face, knew immediately something had shifted. What happened? 3 weeks. No loaner, no self-repair, no options except wait and hope the weather holds. She climbed into the passenger seat, still holding both coffee mugs. What are you thinking? Benjamin took one of the mugs, wrapped his hands around the warmth. I'm thinking about choices. At 10:15 that morning, Benjamin sat at the kitchen table with his laptop open and his coffee forgotten beside him. He typed Massey Ferguson Dealers, Nebraska. First result, Riverside Equipment, Ogallala, 87 miles west. He clicked through. The website loaded slowly on their rural internet. Photos of red tractors in fields that looked like his fields. Testimonials from farmers with names he didn't recognize, but stories he understood. The owner's bio stopped him cold. Grant Sullivan, former John Deere customer, 1985 to 2017. We know what you're going through. We've been there. Let us show you there's another way. Benjamin picked up his phone, dialed before he could talk himself out of it. Grant Sullivan answered on the second ring, voice clear and alert. Riverside Equipment, this is Grant. The words came slowly at first, then faster, like a dam breaking. 48 years with Deere, 4,200 acres, 11 tractors, 3 million spent, fuel injector, 3-week wait, warranty restrictions, service delays, price increases, software lockouts, Matthew Cooper. All of it compressed into 5 minutes of conversation with a stranger who somehow didn't feel like a stranger. Grant listened without interrupting. When Benjamin finished, silence stretched between them for 3 seconds that felt longer. Then, how many machines are we talking about? 11 tractors. The pause that followed carried weight. That's a big switch. Benjamin appreciated the honesty. I know. Grant's voice shifted, becoming more serious but not harder. Don't decide today. Let me come see your operation. No cost, no pressure. Just an honest conversation about what a transition would look like. Benjamin had expected a pitch, a hard sell, promises and guarantees and financing terms rattled off like ammunition. Instead, he got an offer to drive 87 miles just to talk. When? Tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock. I'll drive to you. They set the time. Benjamin ended the call and set the phone down, staring at it like it might offer additional guidance. Margaret sat across from him. What kind of dealer drives 87 miles just to talk? The question hung between them, rhetorical and profound. Benjamin had been asking himself the same thing, but he already knew the answer. The kind who remembered what partnership actually meant. The kind Samuel Pierce would have shaken hands with in 1976. The kind John Deere used to be before corporate metrics replaced human relationships. January 16th, 8:03 in the morning. Grant Sullivan's white F-250 pulled into the driveway plain and unmarked, except for a small Massey Ferguson decal on the rear window. No flashy dealer truck, no billboard on wheels, just a work vehicle driven by a man in work boots and a canvas jacket. Grant stepped out. 55 years old, with gray in his beard and calluses on his hands that said he didn't just sell equipment. He shook Benjamin's hand firm, but not aggressive, meeting eyes in the way that meant he wasn't here to perform. The next 4 hours, Grant walked every acre of the operation that mattered, looked at each of the 11 tractors, asked about acreage breakdown, crop rotation, planting, and harvest windows, current pain points, budget expectations, took notes in a worn notebook, not on a tablet, asked about soil types and drainage patterns and storage capacity, questions that showed he understood farming wasn't just driving tractors in straight lines. He didn't badmouth Deere once, didn't ask why Benjamin was leaving or what finally broke the camel's back, just gathered information like a doctor doing an examination before suggesting treatment. By noon, they stood in the machine shed surrounded by 11 green tractors that represented 48 years of accumulated faith. Grant closed his notebook. Here's what I'm not going to do. Pressure you. Here's what I am going to do. Put together real numbers, equipment specs, parts availability commitments, service response guarantees. Give me 48 hours. Benjamin studied the man's face, looking for the angle to catch the place where sincerity became sales tactic. Why are you doing this? Grant met his gaze without flinching. Because I was you. 2017 Deere changed on me. Took me 32 years to see it. Dealer I'd worked with for decades closed without warning. Corporate consolidated. New dealer was 140 miles away. Service times tripled. Parts became a nightmare. I switched to Massey, sold my farm in 2018, bought this dealership in 2019. The story landed with the weight of shared experience. Grant wasn't selling, he was witnessing. I'll have numbers to you by Friday morning. January 18th, 6:07 in the morning. Benjamin's phone chimed with an email notification. Margaret still asleep. House quiet except for the furnace running and the coffee maker hissing. He opened the email on his laptop, morning light just starting to gray the kitchen windows. Grant's proposal loaded as a PDF. Professional. Detailed. Nothing hidden in fine print or buried in appendices. 6. Massey Ferguson 8S Series tractors, specs listed beside each one, showing how they matched or exceeded his current fleet. Newer technology, better fuel efficiency, open diagnostic systems. Total price $1,950,000. Trade-in value for 11 Deere tractors $2,180,000. Net result $230,000 cash back plus newer, more efficient equipment. Parts availability. All common parts stocked locally. Special orders guaranteed within 48 hours. Price match guarantee, never pay more than Deere retail. Service commitments. Emergency response, 24 hours maximum. Routine service, 3-day maximum wait. Loaners, always available, no charge. Contract penalty if grant failed to meet these terms, $5,000 per day. Software, open diagnostic access. Benjamin could run his own codes. Independent mechanics could service the equipment. Matthew Cooper could work on them. Benjamin read through it twice. Margaret came downstairs, saw him at the table, poured coffee, and sat without speaking. He turned the laptop so she could see. She read in silence, her accountant's brain processing numbers and terms and implications. When she finished, she pulled out her own laptop, opened her loyalty tax spreadsheet, started running calculations. 15 minutes later, she had her answer. Over 10 years, we overpaid Deere by $127,000. The Massey deal saves us $230,000 up front. Better terms, better service guarantees. She looked up, meeting his eyes. From a pure business standpoint, this is obvious. 7:30 that evening, Thomas drove from Omaha, took the day off, arrived for dinner that became a family meeting. Kitchen table again, the place where important decisions happened. Thomas, 28 years old and working in IT security, brought his laptop and pulled up financial models he'd built during his lunch break. Projected costs, risk analysis, worst-case scenarios. He had his mother's mind for numbers and his father's caution about change. From a pure business standpoint, the numbers make sense. He paused, looking at his father. But Dad, this is 48 years of history. Benjamin pushed his plate away, barely touched. Your grandfather started this with Deere. I learned to farm on Deere. That means something. Margaret's voice cut through with clarity that came from seeing things without sentiment clouding vision. It means something to you. Does it mean something to them anymore? Silence filled the kitchen. The furnace kicked on. Outside wind rattled the windows. Benjamin thought about 3 weeks, about warranty restrictions, about Matthew Cooper's destroyed business, about $127,000 in loyalty tax, about Derek's voice saying it's the system like that explained anything or forgave everything. 3 weeks for a warranty repair, refused to let me fix it myself, refused a loaner. He looked at Margaret. That answer your question? Thomas leaned back in his chair, studying his father with the intensity of someone trying to predict an outcome that would affect his inheritance. Are you ready for what comes next? Derek's your friend. This will blow up the relationship. The word friend landed strangely. Benjamin considered it, tested it against memory. Derek at his wedding. Derek at poker nights. Derek's kids calling him Uncle Benjamin. Derek shaking his hand over every tractor purchase for 30 years. But also Derek saying 3 weeks. Derek enforcing policies he knew were wrong. Derek choosing corporate metrics over 3 decades of friendship. I think that relationship already blew up. I just didn't notice until now. Margaret closed her laptop. Then we're agreed. Benjamin looked at his wife, his son, his family who would live with whatever decision he made. We're agreed. Thomas smiled, the kind that said he'd been waiting for this moment. Then let's do it right. January 19th, 8:13 in the morning. Benjamin called Derek's cell phone directly. No parts desk intermediary, no receptionist screen. Just one man to another, the way important conversations should happen. Derek answered on the first ring. Benjamin, hey, I was going to call you. I talked to regional service. They might be able to move you up to... Benjamin interrupted, voice steady and final. Derek, I'm switching to Massey Ferguson. I'm selling all 11 tractors. Wanted you to hear it from me. Silence on the other end. Complete, absolute, the kind of silence that comes from words landing like physical blows. Then, Benjamin, what are you talking about? Grant Sullivan from Ogallala is taking the whole fleet. Transaction closes next week. Derek's voice shifted, disbelief morphing into something defensive. Hold on, after everything, after 48 years? The question deserved an answer, but Benjamin had already given it. Had been giving it for months in every delayed service call and price increase and policy change that valued corporate metrics over human relationships. After everything, I needed a partner who acts like one. Can you honestly tell me Deere still does? A pause. Derek's breathing audible through the phone. Let me call corporate. I can get you priority service. Maybe a trade-in bonus on your next purchase. Benjamin almost laughed. Almost. How much? I can probably get 40,000 added to. Derek, I needed basic respect 3 weeks ago. 40,000 now doesn't fix that. Desperation crept into Derek's voice, the sound of a man watching something important slip away and not knowing how to hold on. Benjamin, don't do this. Let me make some calls. I'll get back to you tomorrow. I'm signing papers today. Benjamin paused, choosing his next words carefully because they would be the last ones that mattered. I'm sorry it came to this, but you've got to understand this isn't about you. This is about a company that forgot what built it. He ended the call, set the phone on the table, sat for a full minute in silence. Margaret appeared in the doorway. How do you feel? Benjamin considered the question seriously, searched for regret or doubt or fear, found none of them. Like I just jumped off a cliff. Ask me in 6 months if there was a parachute. But somewhere inside, beneath the uncertainty and the weight of breaking 48 years of tradition, he felt something else. Something that had been absent so long, he'd almost forgotten the shape of it. Relief. The kind that comes from finally making a decision you've been avoiding because you knew it would cost something. But not making it was costing more. March 22nd, 2024. Noon. 6. Massey Ferguson, 8S. 600 series tractors rolled through Benjamin Pierce's gate on 3 flatbed trailers, their red paint vivid against overcast Nebraska sky. The 11 green machines had departed at dawn, loaded and gone before most of the county woke up. These arrived like replacements in a heart transplant, identical in function but fundamentally different in every way that mattered. Benjamin stood in the same spot he'd occupied that morning, Margaret beside him. Thomas had driven from Omaha, taking a personal day to watch the unloading. The 3 of them formed a silent group at the end of the driveway. Grant Sullivan climbed out of the lead truck work boots, hitting gravel clipboard in hand, but wearing the expression of someone delivering good news instead of just machinery. Ready to get these put to work. Benjamin nodded. Let's see what we've got. The unloading took 90 minutes. Each tractor driven off the trailer by Grant's crew parked in formation inside the machine shed where Green had lived for 48 years. When the last one settled into place, Grant walked the line with Benjamin pointing out features and controls that differed from what he was used to. Diagnostics are open, Grant said, tapping the display screen. You want to run your own codes, you can. Want Matthew Cooper to service them, he can. No lockouts, no passwords you have to beg for. It's your equipment. You own it completely. The words landed differently than they should have. What Grant was describing, full ownership, unrestricted access, the right to repair what you'd paid for, these weren't premium features. These were baseline expectations. The fact that they felt like luxuries said everything about how far things had fallen. I appreciate that, Benjamin said. Grant's expression shifted, became more serious. You're going to get pushback. County's talking already. Some folks won't understand why you'd walk away from Deere. Some will think you're crazy. Some will think you're brave. Which one do you think? I think you're about to find out which one's true. Vincent Hayes pulled into the driveway at that moment, driving slow, like he was either very interested or very suspicious. Probably both. 61 years old, co-op treasurer, farmer for 38 years, conservative by nature and skeptical by experience. He climbed out of his truck, studying the red machines with an expression Benjamin couldn't quite read. "Those look serious, Benjamin." "Time will tell." Vincent walked closer, running his hand along the hood of the nearest 8S. "Whole county's talking. You know that, right?" "Let them talk." Vincent's eyes shifted from the tractor to Benjamin's face, searching for something. Regret, maybe. Doubt. "Some folks think you made a mistake. Some think you're brave." He paused. "I think you're about to find out which one's true." Same words Grant had used. Different delivery. Vincent's version carried warning instead of encouragement. "I appreciate the concern," Benjamin said. Vincent held his gaze for another 3 seconds, then nodded and climbed back into his truck. Drove away without another word. Grant watched him go. "Friend of yours." "Was. We'll see what he is now." By evening, the tractor stood in formation inside the machine shed. 6 red sentinels where 11 green ones had lived for years. Benjamin walked the line, inspecting each one with the thoroughness of a man who'd just bet his operation's future on their performance. Thomas followed, filming on his phone despite Benjamin's earlier objection. "Dad, we should document this. Not for revenge, for transparency." Benjamin stopped at the last tractor, placed his hand on cold metal. "I'm not trying to start a war." Thomas lowered the phone slightly. "You're not starting it. They did when they refused you warranty service. I'm just suggesting we make sure people know what happened." Margaret appeared in the doorway, silhouetted by dusk light. "Thomas is right. You've got receipts for everything. Let people see the truth." Benjamin turned to face them both. His family, his advisors, his conscience in moments when his own might waver. "Fine, but only facts, no drama, no attacks." Thomas nodded, already mentally organizing timelines and spreadsheets and social media strategy. That night, he built the framework for something he didn't yet realize would reach 2.8 million people. Sometimes revolutions start with a single spreadsheet and a man who knows how to make information spread. April 3rd, 2024, 9:37 in the morning. Benjamin ran his new Massey 8S305 across a 240-acre field, pulling his old Kinsey planter. The planter gleamed John Deere green, one of 5 pieces he'd kept, because replacing everything simultaneously made no financial sense. Irony wasn't lost on him, running red to pull green. But efficiency mattered more than symbolism. Third pass, halfway through, hydraulic pressure dropped with the sudden definitiveness of something failing completely. The down pressure system lost resistance. Benjamin felt it through the seat before any warning light confirmed it. He stopped, climbed down, walked the length of the planter in morning sun that promised afternoon heat, found the problem in section 7, blown hydraulic hose on the down pressure cylinder. Clean failure, not catastrophic. The kind that happens when hoses age and pressure cycles wear them down from the inside. Part number AH231847. Catalog retail price $68. 15-minute job if he had the part, maybe 30 if he was being careful and methodical. Benjamin climbed back into the Massey cab, pulled his phone from his jacket, called the Kearney dealership parts desk. Ryan Foster's voice came through, cheerful and efficient. "Kearney Deere Parts." "Ryan, it's Benjamin Pierce. Need part AH231847. Keyboard sounds. Rapid clicking. "Let me check stock." Pause. "Got it. 2 in stock." Relief started to form. Then, "Hold on, Mr. Pierce. I need to transfer you." Benjamin's grip tightened on the phone. "Ryan, just put it aside. I'm coming in." "I can't do that, sir. Hold, please." Hold music. 3 minutes of instrumental corporate blandness designed to make you forget why you were angry while simultaneously making you angrier. Then Lucas Brennan's voice, familiar but strained in a way Benjamin had never heard before. "Benjamin." Single word, no greeting, no preamble, just acknowledgement heavy with implication. "Lucas, what's going on? I just need a hydraulic hose." The pause that followed carried weight like a physical thing. "I can't sell that to you. Benjamin stood beside his tractor phone pressed to his ear, surrounded by 240 acres of dirt that needed planting and equipment that needed fixing. What? I can't process that sale. Disbelief morphed into something sharper. Lucas, Ryan just said you have it in stock. We do. Then sell it to me. Lucas's voice dropped, became quieter, like he was trying to have this conversation without being overheard. I can't. I have direct orders. That's when Benjamin understood. This wasn't about inventory. This wasn't about stock levels or supply chains or any legitimate business reason. This was punishment. 10:20 in the morning. Benjamin walked into the Kearney dealership parts department, the same building he'd walked into hundreds of times over 25 years. Same counter worn smooth by farmers' elbows, same smell of oil and rubber and metal. Same green-painted walls with John Deere logos that had once represented reliability and now represented something else entirely. Behind Lucas Brennan's head, hanging on a pegboard mounted to the wall, he could see it. Part A, H231847 in its distinctive orange packaging. Two of them, right there. Visible, accessible, exactly where Ryan had said they were. Benjamin pointed. Lucas, it's right there. Lucas stood behind the counter. 15-year veteran of this job. Man who'd sold Benjamin thousands of dollars in parts over the years. Wouldn't meet his eyes. His gaze stayed fixed on the computer screen like it might offer escape from this moment. Benjamin, I have direct orders. I can't sell you parts. The words landed with surgical precision. Direct orders. Not policy, not procedure, orders. Direct orders from who? Lucas's jaw worked, but no sound came. His silence answered everything. Lucas, we've known each other 15 years. Look at me. Lucas looked up. His face showed conflict. The expression of a man caught between what he knew was right and what he knew was required. Their eyes met and held. Is this because I bought Massey Ferguson tractors? Lucas's jaw tightened. A slight nod, almost imperceptible. Confirmation without words, because words would make it real and undeniable. Who gave the order? A glance toward the back office, checking for witnesses. Derek. The name hung between them. Derek Holloway. Friend. Business partner. Best man at Benjamin's wedding. The man who'd shaken Benjamin's hand 1,000 times over 30 years. Derek said, don't sell parts to me specifically. Another glance toward the office. He said anyone who switches brands doesn't get part support, corporate policy. Benjamin leaned forward slightly. Show me the policy. It's not written down. The admission confirmed everything. No paper trail, no official directive, just verbal instructions that could be denied later. That left no evidence. That protected everyone except the people being punished. Then it's not a policy, it's retaliation. Lucas's shoulders sagged. I'm sorry, Benjamin. I have a job to keep. Benjamin looked at him for another 3 seconds, memorizing this moment, this betrayal that was both personal and systemic. Then he turned and walked out. No argument, no raised voice, no scene that would give them reason to paint him as unreasonable. But inside something had ignited, something cold and hard and sharp, something like resolve. Benjamin drove 34 miles to the Gibbon dealership. Different franchise, same parent company. He didn't announce himself. Just walked in and asked for Part A H231847. The clerk checked inventory. Yep, we've got 3. Hope flickered. I'll take one. Name for the invoice. The moment of truth. Benjamin Pierce. The clerk typed. His expression changed. Not dramatic, just a subtle shift from helpful to careful. He walked to the back office without explanation, returned with a manager, older, weathered, carrying the authority of someone who made decisions. Mr. Pierce. Benjamin prepared himself. That's me. The manager's face showed practiced sympathy, the expression customer service people develop when delivering bad news repeatedly. The part you're requesting is on back order, 6 to 8 weeks. Benjamin pointed past the counter to the shelf clearly visible behind it. Part A H231847 in orange packaging. 3 of them. Exactly where the first guy had said. That's the part right there, same packaging. Those are allocated for existing customers. The phrase hit like a slap. Existing customers, as if 48 years meant nothing once you made a different choice. I was an existing customer for 48 years. The manager's sympathy remained fixed and professional. I'm sorry, sir, that's our policy. Benjamin didn't argue. Didn't point out the contradiction between back order and visible inventory. Didn't waste breath on logic when the decision had been made before he walked in. He left, sat in his truck in the parking lot, drove 58 miles to Grand Island, larger dealership, more traffic, anonymous enough that maybe the systematic nature of this might break down. Same result. 3 dealerships, same week, same refusal, same message. That's not coincidence, that's coordination. 7:15 that evening, Benjamin's phone rang. Unknown number, local area code. He answered. Lucas Brennan's voice came through quiet, almost whispered. Benjamin, I need to talk to you, off the record. Benjamin leaned back in his kitchen chair. Margaret looked up from her laptop, sensing something. I'm listening. What happened today? I've been here 15 years, never seen anything like it. Benjamin waited. Let Lucas work up to whatever he needed to say. Derek got a call from Regional 3 weeks ago, right after you signed with Massey. They told him to make things difficult for anyone who switches brands. The confirmation settled like sediment in water, expected but still damning. How difficult? No part sales. Slow walk any service requests on equipment they still own. Make them regret leaving. Benjamin closed his eyes. That's retaliation. I know. Lucas's voice cracked slightly. I argued with Derek about it. He said he had no choice. Corporates measuring dealer brand loyalty by retention. Dealers who don't enforce this, their allocation gets cut. It's a punishment system from top to bottom. Why are you telling me this? The question deserved an honest answer. Lucas gave him one. Because it's wrong, and because I think you're going to fight this. And if you do, I'll back you up. The offer carried weight. Lucas was risking his job making this call. Sometimes doing the right thing costs something, and Lucas was willing to pay. I appreciate that, Lucas, more than you know. After hanging up, Margaret spoke without looking up from her screen. What was that about? Benjamin told her everything. The call, the admission, the systematic nature of the retaliation. She listened. Fingers paused over keyboard processing. What are you going to do? Benjamin stared at his phone like it might offer answers it couldn't provide. I'm going to make sure every farmer in Nebraska knows what happens when you exercise choice. April 4th through 7th. Benjamin ordered Part AH231847 from an online agricultural parts supplier in Kansas. Price $71.50 including shipping. Arrived April 7th. He installed it himself in 28 minutes. Timed it. Because timing mattered, because he wanted to know exactly how much the blacklist had cost in practical terms. 4 days of downtime, $1.50 more than Deere catalog price. But the principle, something beyond measurement in currency. That night, Margaret found him in the shop. Tools cleaned and put away. The repaired planter ready for tomorrow's work. What are you going to do? Benjamin wiped his hands on a rag, methodical and thorough the way he did everything. I'm going to document everything, every refusal, every call, every part number and price and conversation, and then I'm going to make sure people know. Margaret pulled out her phone, showed him the spreadsheet she'd been building. I've got 48 years of receipts, every purchase, every price increase. I can show exactly how much they've been gouging us. Thomas called from Omaha. Dad, I've been researching. This isn't just business hardball. This might be an antitrust violation, but we need documentation. We've got documentation. Then let's build a case. April 29th, 9:15 in the morning. Benjamin needed DEF diesel exhaust fluid. Basic consumable like motor oil or windshield washer fluid. He'd bought it from Kearney dealership for 8 years. 2 275-gallon totes per month delivered to the farm. Routine transaction. Should have taken 5 minutes. He called the parts desk. New person. Voice he didn't recognize. Kearney Deere, how can I help? This is Benjamin Pierce. Need 2 totes of DEF delivered Tuesday. A pause. We don't carry DEFs. Benjamin blinked. Processed. Rejected the statement as impossible. You don't carry diesel fluid. Correct. You had 6 pallets last week. I drove past your loading dock. Must have sold out. The lie was so transparent it bordered on insulting. You're a John Deere dealership that doesn't carry DEF. That's right, sir. Benjamin ended the call, got in his truck, drove to the dealership one more time, walked to the loading dock, could see 8 pallets of DEF through the open bay door. Blue containers stacked 4 high, visible, undeniable, exactly where they'd been last week and the week before. He walked into parts. Lucas came out before Benjamin could speak, saw him. Face fell like a man watching something he dreaded finally arrive. Benjamin, please. Benjamin gestured toward the loading dock. I can see the DEF from here, Lucas. 8 pallets. Lucas's voice dropped to almost a whisper. I've got direct orders. No parts, no fluids, no consumables. Not even diesel fluid. Something I can buy at the co-op. Lucas looked at his shoes. Not even that. Lucas, this is insane. You know this is insane, right? I know. Benjamin stepped closer, voice quiet but with carrying edge. 48 years, Lucas. 48 years of buying everything from this place. $3.3 million, and you won't sell me diesel fluid. I'm sorry. Benjamin held his gaze, watching him squirm, wanting him to feel every bit of discomfort this deserved. Don't apologize to me. Apologize to yourself because you're better than this. He walked out, knowing he'd never walk back in. But more than that, he knew farmers across America needed to hear this story. Because if John Deere would do this to a 48-year customer, they'd do it to anyone. He sat in his truck in the parking lot, made 3 calls. Jennifer Clark first. Mid-40s reporter from the Kearney Hub. 20 years in journalism. Old enough to remember when newspapers mattered, and stubborn enough to keep acting like they still did. Jennifer, it happened again. This time, they refused to sell me diesel fluid. Her sharp intake of breath was audible. Can you come in? I want a follow-up story. Brandon Fletcher II, agricultural contract attorney in Lincoln, 52 years old, specialist in right-to-repair litigation. Mr. Fletcher, my name is Benjamin Pierce. I think I have an antitrust case. Brandon's voice carried controlled excitement. I've been following your story, Mr. Pierce. Come see me. First consultation is free. If this is what I think it is, I'll take it pro bono. Thomas III. Son, come home this weekend. Bring your laptop. We're going to war. April 8th. Saturday morning. Thomas drove from Omaha with his laptop, a document scanner, and a plan he'd been developing all week. Set up at the kitchen table like he was preparing for war, which in a sense he was. Dad, I've been researching. This isn't just business hardball. This might be an antitrust violation, but we need documentation. Benjamin and Margaret had spent 48 years keeping receipts. Between them, they had a paper trail that would make accountants weep with joy. I've got every receipt from 48 years. Thomas's eyes lit up the way they did when he saw patterns in data. Perfect. Here's what we do. Build an airtight timeline. Facts only. Dates, part numbers, phone call logs. Then we go public, strategically. The next 8 hours, Thomas spent scanning and organizing. Original 1976 sales receipt when Samuel Pierce bought the first tractor. Every major equipment purchase through 2024. Service records going back to when computers started tracking such things. Parts purchases in Margaret's meticulous spreadsheets. The January 14th fuel injector incident with text messages to Derek preserved in Benjamin's phone. 3 dealership refusals on recorded calls. Nebraska was a one-party consent state, and Benjamin had been recording every call with dealers since February. Lucas's information about regional directives. No recording of that one because it was off the record, but corroborating evidence from multiple sources. By 6:00 p.m., Thomas had built a case file that would make prosecutors jealous. Chronological, documented, irrefutable. 3-pronged approach. Thomas explained. Local news first, get community awareness, then agriculture trade press, then social media. Each phase builds on the last. Benjamin studied his son, seeing echoes of himself in the determination, but recognizing Margaret's strategic mind in the execution. You sure about this? Thomas met his father's eyes with the certainty of someone who'd run all the scenarios and found only one acceptable path. Dad, you tried to buy a $70 part. They refused. Not because they couldn't, because they chose to punish you for making a choice. That's not capitalism. That's feudalism. We document it. We expose it. We let people decide if this is the kind of company they want to do business with. Margaret closed her laptop. Then let's do it right. April 11th. Jennifer Clark from the Kearney Hub met Benjamin at the co-op diner. She arrived with a notebook and a digital recorder, and the expression of someone who suspected this story was bigger than a local interest piece. Benjamin slid the folder across the table, 2 inches thick. Timeline, receipts, recordings, everything. Everything in there is documented. Dates match. Recordings are legal. You can quote me on anything. Jennifer opened the folder, started reading. 2 hours later, her coffee had gone cold 3 times, and the waitress had stopped asking if they needed anything else. This is bigger than I thought. You're alleging systematic retaliation. Benjamin shook his head slightly. I'm not alleging. I'm documenting. 3 dealerships, same week, same response. That's not coincidence. Jennifer's pen moved across her notepad, quick shorthand developed from years of interviews. I need to contact John Deere for comment. I'd expect nothing less. April 15th, Kearney Hub front page. Headline, local farmer alleges parts blacklist after brand switch. Subhead, 48-year customer claims John Deere retaliation for buying competitor tractors. The article included Benjamin's full timeline. Derek Holloway's declined comment. John Deere corporate's response. We don't comment on individual customer situations. A sidebar explaining right to repair issues in agriculture. Community reaction was immediate and divisive. Some farmers called Benjamin brave. Others called him disloyal. Some said he was making problems where none existed. Others said they'd experienced similar treatment but stayed quiet. The county split along invisible lines that had always existed but never been tested. People who valued tradition versus people who valued fairness. People who feared corporations versus people who trusted them. Benjamin had forced everyone to choose a side by refusing to stay silent. April 18th. Stephen Morrison ran Farm Equipment Matters blog from his home office in Iowa. 50,000 farmer subscribers. Former dealer who'd left the industry in disgust 12 years ago. He called Benjamin directly after reading the Hub article. Benjamin, this is exactly what I've been hearing from farmers nationwide. Can I interview you on the record? Completely. The interview ran 90 minutes. Stephen asked questions that cut to bone. Benjamin answered with the precision of someone who'd lived every detail. No embellishment. No drama. Just facts delivered in sequence. April 22nd. Blog post titled, The $70 Part That Exposed John Deere's Retaliation Strategy. Excerpt. Benjamin Pierce didn't set out to become a whistleblower. He just wanted a hydraulic hose. What happened next reveals a corporate strategy that should terrify every farmer in America. The post reached 50,000 farmers in 72 hours. The comment section became a confession booth. Iowa farmer. Same thing happened to me in 2022. Refused to sell me transmission filter after I bought 1 case tractor. 1. Kansas dealer. We got the same directive from regional. Make it difficult. Those were the exact words. Missouri mechanic. They locked me out in 2021. Lost 60% of my business. Had to lay off 2 employees who'd been with me for 15 years. A pattern emerged from noise. This wasn't isolated. This wasn't one rogue dealer or one regional manager having a bad day. This was systematic. This was policy without paper trail. This was everywhere. And now everyone could see it. Matthew Cooper, the 68-year-old independent mechanic who'd been locked out of John Deere's software system, drove to Benjamin's farm on April 20th. Unannounced. Just showed up mid-afternoon while Benjamin was doing maintenance in the shop. Matthew climbed out of his truck slowly, moved like a man who'd aged a decade in 2 years, which in a sense he had. "Benjamin, got a minute?" Benjamin set down his tools. "Matthew, of course, come in." They sat on overturned buckets in the machine shed, surrounded by red tractors that Matthew could actually service now. Not like the green ones that had been locked away from him by software he wasn't allowed to access. "I read the Hub article," Matthew said. "Read the blog post too." Benjamin waited. "I want to thank you for what you're doing. I'm not doing anything except telling the truth." Matthew's hands shook slightly, the kind of tremor that comes from stress that never quite leaves the body. "You know what it's like, 42 years building a business, building a reputation, being the guy farmers trust because you're honest and you're good. Then one day you can't do your job anymore, not because you got old, not because you lost your skills, but because some company decided you're not worthy." He paused, swallowed hard. "I thought about eating a bullet back in November, sat in my truck with my daddy's 38, thought about how much easier it would be than watching everything I built just disappear." Benjamin felt something cold settle in his chest. "Matthew, didn't do it, obviously. Wife found me, got me help, but I came that close." He held up his thumb and forefinger, almost touching. "When people read your story, they think it's about tractors, about parts, about money. But it's not. It's about being told your life's work doesn't matter, that some corporation gets to decide if you're allowed to make a living." Matthew stood, offered his hand. "So thank you for fighting, for making people see what they did wasn't just business, it was cruelty." Benjamin shook his hand, held it longer than normal. "I'm sorry you went through that. I'm sorry it took someone like you getting hurt before people started paying attention, but I'm grateful it's happening now." After Matthew left, Benjamin sat alone in the shop for 20 minutes, thinking about November, about a .38 revolver, about how many other Matthew Coopers were out there who didn't have someone find them in time. Margaret found him there. "You okay?" Benjamin told her about Matthew's visit, about the gun, about November. She sat beside him on the bucket Matthew had vacated. "This is bigger than parts and service. I know. People are going to be watching, expecting things from you. I know that too." She took his hand. "Just don't lose yourself trying to fix everything. You're not responsible for saving everyone, but I can help save some." "Yes, you can." April 25th. Thomas's Twitter thread went live at 6:47 in the morning. Scanned receipts, timeline graphics, audio clips from recorded calls, photos of Benjamin standing at empty parts counters. Everything documented, everything verified, everything impossible to dismiss as hearsay. Hashtag the $70 betrayal. Within 48 hours, 47,000 retweets, 180,000 likes, trending number 3 in agriculture topics. Mainstream media started calling. Matthew Cooper posted his own story that same day. "I lost my livelihood because John Deere decided I wasn't worthy of fixing their equipment anymore. 42 years of experience, gone, because they wanted farmers to have no choice but their dealers. Last November, I almost didn't survive what they did to me. If you're reading this and you're struggling, please call someone. Your life matters more than any corporation's bottom line." His post went viral. 120,000 shares in 72 hours. The comments filled with similar stories. Mechanics locked out. Farmers blacklisted. Small businesses destroyed by policy changes that came without warning and without recourse. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline reported a 17% increase in calls from rural areas that week. Agricultural mental health organizations scrambled to provide resources. Matthew's near miss had opened a conversation nobody wanted to have but everybody needed. April 27th. John Deere hired a PR firm. Narrative Strategies, LLC, out of Chicago. 47 new Twitter accounts appeared within 24 hours, all claiming to be farmers, all defending the company. As a fourth-generation farmer, I've never had problems with Deere. This sounds like sour grapes from someone who made a bad business decision. Benjamin Pierce is just looking for attention. Real farmers don't air their dirty laundry in public. Deere has always stood by me. This is a hit job. The accounts all followed similar patterns, created within days of each other. No photos, minimal post history, identical talking points phrased in slightly different ways. Thomas ran the IP addresses through analysis software he used for work. Every single account routed through the same Chicago server cluster, same digital fingerprint, same source. He exposed the astroturfing campaign in a follow-up thread April 30th. Screenshots. IP trace data. Linguistic analysis showing identical writing patterns across supposedly different users. The name of the PR firm, Narrative Strategies, LLC. Their client list. Their standard rate card for social media manipulation campaigns. Bloomberg picked it up within hours. Headline: John Deere's digital damage control backfires. The article detailed how the company's attempt to create fake grassroots support had exposed them to more criticism and ridicule than the original story had generated. Every attempt to control the narrative made things worse. Every defensive move revealed new vulnerabilities. Benjamin had started with one simple request: sell me a $70 part. Now it had become something neither he nor the company could contain. May 2nd. Wall Street Journal Agriculture section. Article titled Tractor Wars: When Brand Loyalty Becomes a Weapon. Quote from industry analyst: John Deere's attempt to punish brand switchers may cost them between $140 and $200 million this fiscal year in lost sales. The Pierce effect, as some analysts are calling it, demonstrates how quickly social media can turn a local dispute into a national crisis. The company's response, or lack thereof, has only amplified the damage. May 5th. NPR, Here and Now. 12-minute segment interviewing Benjamin via phone from the farm. Host question near the end: Mr. Pierce, what would you say to John Deere's CEO if he were listening right now? Benjamin's response came without hesitation. No anger, no theatrics, just quiet certainty. I'd say you built this company on farmers' trust, and you're destroying it one $70 part at a time. Every farmer who calls for service and gets told to wait. Every mechanic you lock out of software. Every customer you punish for making a choice. That's not business strategy. That's arrogance, and it's costing you more than money. It's costing you the thing that built you in the first place. The quote became the soundbite, played on agricultural radio stations across the Midwest, shared on social media, printed in farm magazines. Destroying it one $70 part at a time. 6 words that captured everything. May 6th. Co-op meeting. 18 farmers. Agenda supposed to be seed pricing for next year. Vincent Hayes stood up 5 minutes in. Before we talk seed prices, we need to talk about Benjamin Pierce. Stephen Richards, 59 years old. Deere loyalist for 40 years, leaned back in his chair. What's there to talk about? Benjamin made his choice. He left Deere. Deere stopped supporting him. That's business. Vincent's jaw set. Is it choosing a different tractor means losing access to parts for equipment you still own? That sounds like extortion, not business. Stephen shrugged. He should have thought about that before switching. So we're prisoners. Vincent's voice hardened. Buy brand X forever or lose all support. That's not a free market. That's a hostage situation. We're customers. We earn discounts and service through loyalty. We paid for that service with millions of dollars over decades. That's not loyalty. That's a business transaction. And when one side stops honoring it, the other side has the right to leave. The room went quiet. Farmers who'd known each other for decades looked at each other with new suspicion, wondering who would be next to leave, who would stay, who would be punished for choosing. Tom Patterson. Vincent's neighbor, 58 years old and neutral until this moment, spoke into the silence. If they're doing this to Benjamin, they'll do it to any of us. Today it's hydraulic hoses. Tomorrow it's something we need to get harvest in. Who's comfortable with that? 6 hands raised hesitantly. 12 stayed down. The room had divided. May 8th. Vincent Hayes walked into Riverside Equipment in Ogallala. Told Grant Sullivan he wanted a Massey Ferguson 7S 180. Grant asked why. Vincent said, "I'm 61 years old, ran Deere for 38 years, but I won't do business with bullies, and I won't wait until they decide I'm not loyal enough to deserve parts." Transaction completed in 4 hours. Vincent drove home in a red tractor. Word spread faster than wildfire. May 15th. Donald Porter, 39 years old. Young farmer with 2,400 acres and 3 decades of farming ahead, ordered a Case YH Magnum 340. Told the dealer, "I'm building my operation for the next 30 years. I need partners who respect me, who won't hold me hostage." Benjamin Pierce showed me that's possible. May 22nd. 2 more co-op members ordered Massey Fergusons. By end of May, 7 farmers had switched, representing $4.2 million in equipment purchases, not to Deere. To competitors who'd learned you need to treat customers like partners instead of captives. Matthew Cooper got calls from all of them. Could he service these new machines? Absolutely. His schedule filled. His employees returned. His business revived. One afternoon in late May, he called Benjamin. "You saved my business, you know that, right?" "I didn't do anything except tell the truth. Sometimes that's all it takes. But I want you to know something else. You saved more than my business. You saved my life. Because now I got a reason to wake up. Work to do. People counting on me. I'm not sitting in my truck with a gun anymore." Benjamin's throat tightened. "I'm glad, Matthew, really glad." "Me too, and I got you to thank for it." June 29th, 2024, 9:07 in the morning. Silver Chevy Suburban with Illinois plates rolled down Benjamin Pierce's gravel driveway. Dust plume trailing behind like exhaust from something burning. 2 men emerged wearing suits that looked expensive and out of place against the backdrop of fields and machinery and honest dirt. Timothy Walsh, Assistant Vice President, 45 years old. Corporate polish and nervous energy radiating from shoulders held too tight. Kevin Morrison from Public Relations, 38, carrying a tablet and the expression of someone who'd rather be anywhere else. Benjamin met them outside the machine shed, didn't walk toward the house, didn't offer coffee or handshakes or the small courtesies that lubricate difficult conversations. Just stood with arms crossed waiting. Timothy approached with hand extended. "Mr. Pierce, I'm Timothy Walsh from John Deere Corporate. Thank you for meeting with us." Benjamin looked at the hand but didn't take it. "Didn't realize I had a choice. You drove 7 hours. Seemed rude to send you back." Timothy lowered his hand, recalibrated. "We wanted to speak with you directly, face to face, address the concerns you've raised." The word concerns landed wrong. Too sanitized for what had happened. Concerns. Benjamin's voice stayed level but carried an edge underneath. "Let's be clear about what we're doing here. This isn't about customer satisfaction. This is about damage control. Your company's losing market share and you're here to stop the bleeding. So let's skip the corporate speak and talk straight." Timothy Walsh had come expecting a farmer he could smooth talk with promises and polish. He found a man who'd spent 2 months documenting every lie, every contradiction, every broken promise in spreadsheets and recordings and lawyer-reviewed timelines. Silence stretched for 3 seconds. Timothy adjusted his approach, tone shifting from conciliatory to transactional. "Fair enough. Here's what we're prepared to do. $50,000 credit toward your next John Deere purchase. Priority service scheduling for any Deere equipment you currently own. Guaranteed parts availability through a direct corporate account, bypassing dealer inventory systems. Kevin jumped in, eager to add value. We're also implementing new dealer policies region-wide, customer-first initiatives, training programs on relationship management, accountability measures for service response times. This is a comprehensive overhaul of how we do business. Benjamin let them finish. Let the offer sit in the morning air between them. Can your dealer sell me parts now? Timothy nodded. Yes, absolutely. We've clarified that policy internally. What policy? Show me the written policy that said dealers should refuse parts to brand switchers. Timothy's jaw tightened microscopically. There was a miscommunication about brand loyalty programs and resource allocation priorities. Benjamin stepped closer, not aggressive, but direct in the way that makes people uncomfortable when they're used to controlling space. Don't insult me by calling it a miscommunication. I was refused at 3 dealerships. Same week, same message. Lucas Brennan told me Derek Holloway got a directive from Regional to make things difficult for anyone who switches brands. That's not miscommunication. That's coordination. That's policy. Just policy you were smart enough not to write down. Timothy's pause lasted long enough to confirm everything. Dealers receive recommendations about resource allocation priorities based on customer lifetime value and strategic partnership metrics. Resource allocation. Benjamin's voice carried an edge that cut deeper than shouting. Corporate euphemism for retaliation dressed in business language. You punished me for making a choice. Call it what it is. Kevin opened his mouth. Timothy shot him a look that said, stay quiet. Benjamin continued. Matthew Cooper, independent mechanic, 42 years fixing John Deere equipment. You locked him out of servicing anything built after 2021. He lost 60% of his income, had to lay off 2 employees, nearly killed himself last November because you destroyed his livelihood, all because your software says independent mechanics can't touch your equipment. You did that to force farmers to use your dealers, to eliminate choice. Is that resource allocation too? Timothy tried again, voice taking on a note of reasonableness that felt manufactured. Mr. Pierce, we're offering you a substantial gesture of goodwill, $50,000, priority service, direct corporate support. What more do you want? The question deserved an honest answer. Benjamin gave him one. I wanted you to sell me a $70 hydraulic hose. That's all. One $70 part. You refused. Then you refused diesel fluid. Then you blacklisted me across 3 dealerships. And now you show up with $50,000 because the story went viral and you're bleeding customers. You think money fixes broken trust. We're trying to make this right. You're trying to make this go away. There's a difference. Benjamin turned toward his shop. Gentlemen, I appreciate you coming, but I'm not interested in credits or priority service or corporate accounts. I'm done with John Deere. You can let yourselves out. Timothy tried once more. Mr. Pierce, please. Benjamin kept walking. We're done here. He disappeared into the shop, leaving them standing in his driveway with their briefcase and tablet and $50,000 offer that meant nothing. Because you can't buy back trust once it's gone. You can't purchase integrity after you've sold it. And you can't make someone unsee what they've learned about who you really are. Timothy and Kevin stood for 30 seconds, then climbed back into the Suburban and drove away. Gravel crunching under tires. Dust cloud marking their departure. Margaret walked down from the porch, found Benjamin in the shop standing beside the massy hand resting on red paint. You just turned down $50,000. Benjamin didn't look at her. No, I turned down an insult packaged as money. There's a difference. Thomas called from Omaha within the hour. Dad, that took guts. Didn't take guts. Took clarity. Some things aren't for sale. July 3rd. Email arrived in Benjamin's inbox at 6:42 in the morning. Subject line, you're not alone. Sender Richard Thompson, dealer from Des Moines. Text read, Mr. Pierce, my name is Richard Thompson. I own a John Deere dealership in Des Moines. I've been a dealer for 23 years. I want you to know we received the same directive you described. In March, during a regional dealer call, we were told to prioritize parts allocation for brand-loyal customers. When I asked what that meant, I was told, use your judgment, but remember retention matters. I understood what they meant. 3 other dealers on that call understood too. We talked about it after. 2 of them enforced it. I refused. Last month, John Deere Corporate threatened my dealership agreement, said my customer retention metrics weren't acceptable, said I wasn't aligned with company values. I'm 58 years old, built this dealership from nothing, and now they're threatening to take it because I won't punish farmers for making choices. I'm prepared to testify to all of this under oath if it helps your case. Some things matter more than franchise agreements. The email joined others in Thomas's growing archive. July 8th. Phone call from Kansas. Dealer who wouldn't give his name. Voice disguised. Background noise suggested he was calling from somewhere public away from his dealership. They called it inventory prioritization. We all knew what it meant. You allocate parts to customers who buy your brand. You slow walk parts for customers who don't. If you don't do it, your allocation from corporate gets cut. Then you can't compete with other dealers. It's a punishment system from top to bottom. They make you the bad guy, but they're the ones giving orders. I can't come forward. I got kids in college. But I wanted you to know you're not crazy. This is real. This is everywhere. The recording joined others in the archive. Evidence mounting like sediment. Layer upon layer building a case that couldn't be dismissed or explained away. July 12th. Nebraska Dealer Association meeting. 11. John Deere dealers present. Someone leaked the minutes to Farm Equipment Matters blog within 24 hours. Topic: Miller Situation Response Strategy. Key quotes from minutes. 8 of us received the same guidance from regional. Only 2 dealers actually enforced it strictly. Corporate is denying any written policy existed. Legal exposure is significant if this goes to court. We need to decide, do we protect corporate or protect ourselves? Vote taken. 7 dealers voted to cooperate with any legal investigation. 4 voted to maintain corporate loyalty. The fracture showed. Even dealers were splitting, choosing sides, deciding whether protecting the company was worth sacrificing their own credibility. July 15th. Lucas Brennan quit his job at Kearney dealership, gave 2 weeks' notice, worked his final days in silence processing parts orders for customers who weren't blacklisted, avoiding eye contact with the ones who knew what he'd done. His last day was July 29th. He cleaned out his desk, walked to his truck, never looked back. July 16th. Lucas gave an interview to Farm Equipment Matters. On the record, no voice disguising, full name attached. I was parts manager for 15 years. I was told directly by Derek Holloway to refuse parts sales to Benjamin Pierce and any other farmer who switched brands. I was told this came from regional directive. I have emails. I have recorded phone calls documenting the instructions. I'm prepared to testify under oath. I stayed quiet for 3 months because I needed the job. But I can't sleep anymore. I can't look at myself. Some things cost more than a paycheck. The blog post included scanned emails showing Derek's directives, date stamps, subject lines, direct quotes, paper trail that corporate had insisted didn't exist. Within hours, 3 more dealers came forward. Not publicly, but to Brandon Fletcher, the attorney, willing to testify, willing to provide documentation, willing to burn bridges if it meant stopping something they knew was wrong. July 20th, 2024, 7:42 in the evening. Derek Holloway's truck pulled into Benjamin's driveway, sat there for 3 minutes before Derek climbed out. Benjamin was in the shop doing maintenance on the Massey, heard the truck, recognized the engine sound from 30 years of familiarity. walked out into dusk light that painted everything in shades of amber and shadow. Derek got out slowly, looked like he'd aged a decade in 6 months, tired in the bone-deep way that comes from fighting battles you know you're losing. "Can we talk?" Benjamin leaned against the doorframe. "That depends. You here as a friend or as a dealer?" "I don't know anymore. Maybe both, maybe neither." They walked to the fence line without discussion, both gravitating toward neutral ground where this conversation could happen without the weight of buildings and equipment and history pressing down. Derek spoke first. "I'm losing the dealership." Benjamin absorbed the information without reaction. "I heard. Corporate put me on a performance improvement plan. Sales down 31%. Parts down 28%. 3 techs quit. They're giving me 90 days to turn it around or they're terminating my franchise agreement." He paused. "We both know I'm not turning it around. Numbers like that don't reverse in 90 days. They're going to take it." "I'm sorry to hear that." Derek laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Are you really—" Benjamin searched himself for satisfaction, for vindication, for the taste of victory that should come from watching someone who'd wronged you suffer consequences. Found none of it. "I don't know what to tell you, Derek." "Nothing to tell. I made my choices." Derek looked at him, finding no satisfaction or vindication in Benjamin's face. Just quiet assessment. "You know what the worst part is? They're going to take my dealership anyway. Because you were right. Once you stood up, others followed. And once they followed, there was no stopping it. The dam broke. I destroyed our friendship, lost my business, enforced policies I knew were wrong. And for what? They're still taking it. I sacrificed everything and got nothing." The breakdown was complete. 30 years of professional polish stripped away, leaving just raw admission of failure. "I'm sorry, Benjamin. I'm genuinely deeply sorry. I lost my integrity trying to save my business, and I lost both." Benjamin absorbed the apology, let it settle like dust after a storm. "I accept your apology, Derek." Hope flickered across Derek's face like a match in darkness. "Does that mean—" "It means I accept your apology. It doesn't mean I'm coming back. It doesn't mean we're friends again. That bridge burned when you made your choice, not mine." Derek nodded, understanding dawning that some things couldn't be rebuilt. Some betrayals were permanent. "I know. I just needed you to know I was sorry." "I know you are. But sorry doesn't rebuild trust. Only time and actions do that. And we're out of time. You're out of chances, and I'm out of patience for people who choose systems over people." Derek stood, walked to his truck, stopped with his hand on the door. "For what it's worth, you were right about all of it. Corporate doesn't care about dealers. They don't care about farmers. They don't care about 48 years or 30 years or any amount of loyalty. They care about quarterly numbers. And I was stupid enough to believe protecting them would protect me." Benjamin spoke the truth even though it wouldn't help. "You weren't stupid. You were scared. Fear makes us do things we regret, makes us compromise values we thought were solid. I don't hate you, Derek. I probably never will, but I can't trust you anymore. And without trust, there's nothing left to build on." Derek drove away, tail lights fading into distance like the last embers of something that used to warm them both. Margaret came out, found Benjamin still at the fence line staring at where the truck had disappeared into gathering dark. "You okay?" Benjamin nodded slowly. "Yeah, it needed to happen for both of us. He needed to say it. I needed to hear it. And we both needed to understand it doesn't change anything." "Does part of you want to forgive him? Really forgive him?" "Part of me already has, but forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, doesn't mean going back. Some doors close for good reasons, and they should stay closed." August 14th. Derek Holloway sold his dealership to Heartland Agricultural Partners, regional dealership group that operated 47 locations across 8 states. The sale included all assets, inventory, customer contracts. Derek would stay on as general manager for 1 year to fulfill his contract, then probably retire. 48 years old with enough saved to live comfortably, maybe fish more, maybe figure out who he was when he wasn't selling tractors. He called Benjamin that afternoon. Last call. You probably heard I sold. I did, I'm sorry. Don't be. I brought it on myself. You were right about everything. Corporate didn't protect me. They threw me under the bus the second it was convenient, used me to enforce their policies, then blamed me when those policies blew up. What will you do? Stay on 1 year as GM, fulfill my contract, then probably retire. I'm 48, got enough saved, maybe fish more, maybe figure out who I am when I'm not selling tractors. Pause. It's not too late to change back, you know. For me, maybe it is. But for other dealers, other farmers, maybe your fight changes things, makes them see what I couldn't. That choosing short-term profits over long-term relationships destroys both. I hope it does. Me too. The call ended. Last conversation between two men who'd done business together for 30 years. Not enemies, not friends, just people who'd chosen different paths and found themselves on opposite sides of something bigger than either of them. October 8th, 2024. John Deere Corporate held a press conference in Des Moines. CEO announced the Customer First initiative. New policies effective immediately. Open diagnostic access for all equipment. Independent mechanics authorized to service John Deere equipment with full software access. Parts availability guaranteed within 48 hours, regardless of customer equipment mix. No dealer may refuse sales based on customer brand choices. Service scheduling prioritized by need-not loyalty metrics. What they didn't say was any of this was wrong before. No admission of systematic retaliation. No acknowledgement that internal directives had created the problem. Just forward-looking policy changes framed as improvement rather than correction. Farmer reaction on social media was immediate and cynical. Too little, too late. Believe it when I see it. Policy means nothing without enforcement. They only changed because they got caught. Wall Street Journal analysis. John Deere's policy reversal comes after losing an estimated 2.3% market share in Nebraska alone, with similar losses reported in Iowa, Kansas, and Missouri. The company declined to comment on whether similar brand loyalty programs existed in other regions or are being discontinued. Competitors report double-digit sales increases in areas where John Deere's practices were publicized. The Pierce effect, as some analysts call it, may cost Deere between $140 and $200 million in lost sales this fiscal year, with ongoing reputation damage difficult to quantify. Benjamin's response when Jennifer Clark asked for comment. Good policies should have existed all along, but I'm not celebrating. Policy on paper doesn't rebuild trust. That takes years and actions, not press releases. The real question is, how many farmers took this abuse silently for years because they were afraid to fight back? How many mechanics lost their businesses without anyone noticing? How many Benjamin Pierces are out there who just accepted it and moved on? And what does that say about how we let corporations treat people? March 22nd, 2025, exactly 1 year after the switch. Benjamin prepped his 6 Massey Ferguson tractors for planting season, checked fluids, changed filters, ran diagnostics using software he owned and controlled. Same routine he'd performed for 48 years with different machines. Margaret compiled the Year 1 report. Numbers that would determine whether the gamble had paid off or cost them more than money could measure. Total hours across 6 tractors, 1,247 average. Breakdowns requiring dealer service 0. Unscheduled downtime 0 days. Fuel efficiency versus previous Deere fleet up 11%. Maintenance costs down 19%. Annual savings from fuel maintenance and parts $41,000. Finance payment $280,000 per year at 4.2% interest. Trade-in profit of $230,000 covered the first year entirely. Net year 1 cost $9,000 after savings. Break-even projection year 3. Profit starts year 4 and continues every year after for the life of the equipment. Projected 10-year savings versus keeping the Deere fleet $417,000. Margaret closed her laptop. We made the right call, financially and ethically, and honestly, I sleep better knowing we did. Vincent Hayes pulled up mid-morning, got out of his truck, walked to where Benjamin stood inspecting the tractors lined up and ready. Year ago today, you were the crazy one. Now 7 of us run Massey. 3 more run Case. 2 went with New Holland. You started something, Benjamin. Benjamin wiped his hands on a rag. I just wanted to buy a hose. Yeah, and Rosa Parks just wanted to sit down on a bus. Sometimes small stands become big movements. You showed people it was possible to say no. That matters more than you probably know. Vincent paused. County's different now. People question things. Ask whether their dealer's really looking out for them or just hitting metrics. That didn't happen before you made your stand. Benjamin shook his head. I'm not Rosa Parks. No, but you did what she did. You said no when everyone expected you to say yes, when it was easier to stay quiet, when fighting back meant risking everything. That kind of courage is contagious. Vincent left. Benjamin stood in his shop surrounded by red instead of green, thinking about how one decision compounds into others, how patterns shift when someone breaks them, how the ground doesn't care what color the tractor is as long as the work gets done. March 28th, 2025. Benjamin sat in the witness chair before the Senate Agriculture Committee. Washington, D.C. chamber packed with farmers and reporters and lobbyists whose jobs involve preventing exactly this kind of testimony. Senator from Iowa, 72 years old and farmer himself before entering politics, asked Benjamin to explain what happened. Benjamin had prepared notes, found he didn't need them. The story told itself. Senators, I'm not here because I hate John Deere. I'm here because I loved them for 48 years. And that's what makes this hurt. Pause. The room went silent except for camera shutters clicking. My father bought our first Deere in 1976, bicentennial year. He taught me that loyalty matters, that relationships matter, that a handshake means something, that when you do business with someone for decades, that creates obligations on both sides. John Deere taught me something else. That loyalty only matters when both sides honor it. That handshakes break when one side decides metrics matter more than people. He looked down the line of senators, met their eyes one by one. I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm not asking for revenge. I'm asking for one thing: the right to repair equipment I own, the right to buy parts without punishment, the right to choose who I do business with without retaliation. These aren't radical demands, they're basic fairness. If my story helps one farmer stand up for themselves, or helps one mechanic keep their business, or helps one company remember that customers are people and not account numbers, then every moment of this fight was worth it. Thank you. The committee voted 14-3 to advance the Right to Repair Agricultural Equipment Act. The bill faced a long road through Congress, hearings, amendments, lobbying from both sides, the usual machinery of legislation that moves slower than farming seasons. But it had momentum that didn't exist before one farmer decided $70 was worth fighting for. April 25th, 2025, Industry Trade Show in Des Moines. Benjamin walked the floor with Thomas beside him, documenting everything for the archive that had become something between historical record and insurance policy. Grant Sullivan's Massey Ferguson booth dominated center space. Biggest presence they'd ever had at this show. 20-foot display. 3 tractors on the floor. 10 salespeople working the crowd. Grant found Benjamin in the crowd. We're adding 2 more dealerships in Nebraska this year, Hastings and Norfolk. You did this, Benjamin. Benjamin shook his head. You did this by treating people right, by keeping promises, By being the kind of partner farmers need. We both did it. You showed farmers there's a choice. I gave them a good one. Together we shifted a market everyone thought was permanent. The partnership between them wasn't formal or documented, but it was real. Benjamin had created space for change. Grant had filled it with something worth choosing. Matthew Cooper appeared mid-afternoon, walking better than he had a year ago, standing straighter. The weight of near suicide lifted enough to let him breathe. Benjamin wanted you to see this. He handed over a business card. Matthew Cooper, Agricultural Mechanics Training Program. Kearney Community College Partnership. We're teaching the next generation open source diagnostics, right to repair principles, how to work on equipment from any manufacturer. 20 students enrolled for fall semester, grants sponsoring half the tuition. Benjamin looked at the card, felt something warm spread through his chest. This is good, Matthew, really good. Wouldn't exist without you. You gave me a reason to keep living. Figured I should make that count for something. Help other people avoid what I went through. They shook hands. No more words needed. May 15th, 2025. Benjamin stood in his barn at dusk. 6 red tractors lined up where 11 green ones used to be. Tomorrow would bring planting, same as every year. Same cycle of preparation and execution and harvest that had defined his life since age 6. Margaret found him there. Any regrets? Not one. I sleep better now than I did when I was loyal to people who didn't value it. Thomas appeared, home for the weekend. Dad, there's a farmer in South Dakota who just went public with a similar story. Cited you, said you gave him courage. His thread's already got 15,000 retweets. Benjamin nodded. Good, maybe he'll save someone else the trouble. The 3 of them stood together in fading light. Family held together by more than blood, by shared decisions, by supporting each other through uncertainty, by choosing principle over convenience. Benjamin sat in the Massey cab alone for a moment after they went inside. The cab smelled different than the Deere had, cleaner somehow, less like diesel and compromise, more like possibility. He closed his eyes, saw Samuel's face in memory, clear as the day they'd driven that first green tractor together in 1976. His father's voice came to him, not out loud, just in the quiet place where memory and conscience live together. You didn't betray me, son. You honored what I really taught you. Keep your word even when it costs everything. Stand up even when it's hard. Choose right over easy. I'm proud of you. Benjamin opened his eyes. Tears came for the first time since he'd made the decision a year ago. Not sadness, relief, resolution. The knowledge that he'd done what needed doing, that the cost had been worth paying, that his father would have understood. The barn lights dimmed. Outside Nebraska stretched in every direction. Fields waiting for morning, for machines that would work them regardless of color, for seasons that would come whether anyone was ready or not. Benjamin walked toward the house where Margaret and Thomas waited with dinner warming and conversation ready. Left the tractors behind knowing they'd be there tomorrow when work began again. Some bridges burn because they have to. Some loyalty ends because it should. Some fights matter more than the cost of fighting them. Benjamin had learned all 3 lessons in the space of 1 year, and though the learning hurt, the knowledge was worth keeping. Tomorrow would bring planting. Next year would bring harvest. The cycle would continue with new equipment and old patterns and the steady progression of seasons that wait for no one. But something had changed that couldn't be measured in yields or profits or market share. Trust once broken reveals its true value. Loyalty once weaponized loses its power. And farmers, once they see what's possible, can't unsee it. Benjamin Pierce had shown them, had paid the price to prove it could be done, had absorbed the cost so others wouldn't have to. Now they had to decide what to do with the knowledge. But that was their choice to make, their bridge to burn or preserve, their loyalty to honor or revoke. His choice was made. His tractors were red. His conscience was clear. And the ground, as always, didn't care about anything except the work. He entered the house, hung his jacket on the hook by the door, washed his hands in the kitchen sink, sat down to dinner with his family. Margaret asked about his day. Thomas talked about work in Omaha, normal conversation about normal things. But underneath ran a current of something stronger. The knowledge that when it mattered, when everything was on the line, they'd chosen right over easy. They'd stood when they could have bent. They'd spoken when silence would have been safer. And though the cost had been real, the result made it worthwhile. Some stories end with triumph, some with tragedy. This one ended with something quieter but more lasting. Truth, integrity, the peace that comes from knowing you did what was right even when it cost everything. Benjamin Pierce had kept his word to his father in a way Samuel never could have predicted, not by maintaining loyalty to a brand, but by maintaining loyalty to principles, to fairness, to the belief that relationships should flow both ways, that power shouldn't go unchecked, that ordinary people can stand against systems that treat them as expendable. Outside, the red tractors waited for morning. Inside, a family who'd weathered the storm together sat down to dinner. And somewhere in Iowa, in boardrooms and dealerships and corporate offices, people were learning a lesson that should never have needed teaching. Customers aren't accounts. Loyalty isn't ownership. And trust once broken doesn't buy back with money. It rebuilds with time, with changed actions, with proof that the lessons learned weren't just temporary accommodations to crisis, but genuine transformations of character. Whether John Deere would learn that lesson remained to be seen. But Benjamin Pierce had done his part. He'd shown that another way was possible. And in the end, that's all anyone can do. Show what's possible. Stand for what's right. And trust that others will see the path you've cleared and choose to walk it. The rest is up to them.